אלך אותה לצרור, לגלות על יום שמחתי, בגדי שש עם שני להתבוננו מזקניי. שבת היום היום להשם, שבת היום להשם. ולבו עלי בניי ועדנו מעדניי, שבת היום היום להשם. מהו את המנה לעשות את דבר אסתר, וחישבו עם הקונה לשבחו יותר. חובי אמונה ושטויי נשמני, שבת היום היום להשם, שבת היום להשם. ולבו עלי בניי ועדנו מעדניי, שבת היום היום להשם, שבת היום להשם. חזק קרייתי אל אלוקים עליון, והשב את נבטי בשמחה ובהיגיון. ישוררו שם רנניי לוויי וכהניי, ואז תתענג על השם, שבת היום להשם. ולבו עלי בניי ועדנו מעדניי, שבת היום היום להשם, שבת היום להשם. שלא אכלנו, צומי שלא אכלנו, צומי שלא אכלנו, ברכו אמוני, צוונו והותרנו כדבר אדוני. צומי שלא אכלנו, ברכו אמוני, והותרנו כדבר אדוני. חזן, 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 חזן את עולמו, חזן, 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 חזן את עולמו, חזן את עולמו, רואינו אבינו, קבלנו את לחמו ואינו שתינו, על כן נודה לשמור, מהללו בפינו, אמרנו וענינו, קדוש כאדוני. צומי שלא אכלנו, צומי שלא אכלנו, צומי שלא אכלנו, ברכו אמוני, צוונו והותרנו כדבר אדוני. צומי שלא אכלנו, ברכו אמוני, צוונו והותרנו כדבר אדוני. בשיר בשיר בשיר, בשיר וכל תודה, בשיר בשיר בשיר, בשיר וכל תודה, שכי אבותינו, מתון וצדע השביע לנפשנו, חסדו גבר עלינו באמת אדוני. צומי שלא אכלנו, צומי אמוני, צוונו והותרנו כדבר אדוני. צומי שלא אכלנו, ברכו אמוני, צוונו והותרנו כדבר אדוני. רחם 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 בחסדך רחם 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 בחסדך רחם בחסדך על עמך צורנו עד ציון ישכון כבודך זכות ובעבדך לכבוד יגאלנו רוח אבינו משיח אדוני צור משלו אכלנו צור משלו אכלנו צור משלו אכלנו תגיד לאדוני צור משלו אכלנו ברכו אמונה סבן ואותנו תקרא אדוני ייבנה המקדש ייבנה המקדש שיר ציון תמלא בשלם שיר של
Alrighty. All right, here we go. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And we are going to start study now. Night, we had a nice Shabbat meal. We did Shabbat meal slash Thanksgiving meal. And so I made kind of a vegan Thanksgiving meal. So I'm vegetarian. Let's turn the music off. And let's go back here. There we go. Let's stop it. In fact, we'll go like this. Since I'm a vegetarian, Shabbat Shalom, Raphael Mike. Nice to see you, my friend from Uganda. So, yeah, I made which is basically a giant chunk of seitan, which I added lots of herbs and spices, and then I made my own stuffing, and then we had roasted squash with maple syrup and pecans, and then roasted vegetables, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and carrots. Also spices fresh from the garden outside. Some cranberry sauce. Shall I say cranberry sauce substitute, because I could not get any cranberry sauce. So we used something instead. I used the cherry jam mixed with a little bit of strawberry jam, and then spiced up with a little bit of parsley, and it was delicious. To make a long story short. All right, let me get rid of this. And then for dessert, I was supposed to make pumpkin pie, but I didn't have time before Shabbat, so I'm going to make pumpkin pie tomorrow. But at any rate, it was a really Shabbat. And now Shabbat day, and we are going to do the Torah study. So let's do it. So the way I've been doing it lately is, and I think this works really well actually, is just starting by reading through the Parsha in Hebrew without any commentary. And the only time I'll stop is if it's something very, very important that I want to say. But otherwise, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just read it through without any commentary. And if anyone wants to read as well, you're welcome to read. You can hop onto the mic. You'd have to come into, in order to full interaction in the study, you have to follow the StreamYard link. If you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, you can listen. I mean, you can watch and listen and comment. That's it. But you can't interact in on the other way. If you're in the main studio, then I can actually bring you off the voice, and you can read, you can ask questions, you can have a discussion, etc., etc. So it's always best to come into the first link, which is the StreamYard link. At any rate, here we go. Welcome, Raphael Mike. I heard you texted me earlier, said you're working on your vegetable garden with your green peppers. I also grow green peppers. Okay, so here we go. Let me close a couple windows. Let me share the screen. So let's do it this way with the window. Okay, there we go. Looks a little bit weird when I'm on this screen, but I'm not going to be on this screen for more than another second. So welcome, everybody. This is the World Alliance of Qara'im Shabbat Torah study. I love doing these studies. Please tell your friends, tell your family. This is going to grow because there's such a desire and such a need for true Torah out there. Okay, well, we're talking about, well, let's go back. I always like to go back a little bit. We're in Vayeishev. That's the name of the parsha. We follow a biblical calendar. Everyone's doing it, so why not? I don't feel there's anything canonical about following this calendar. In fact, there are a number of different calendars that I always point out in the Jewish world. The Sephardim follow a slightly different calendar. There's a 2-year calendar. There's a 3-year calendar. Those are very rare, but I follow the standard Ashkenazi calendar, I guess because I'm Ashkenazi, or I guess because most of everyone is doing Vayeishev, the part. Go back, and what we had before was the story of Yaakov reconnoiting, I believe that's the word, meeting up again with Esav. He was the and 1 second here. Right. His name is Raziel. Benjamin is born. That's 1 second here. I think we ended in 36. 1 second here. Right. Just 1 second here. Okay. All right, let's go ahead. So here we are. We are going to start talking about Yosef. Yosef is the firstborn of Jacob, of Rachel. And Yosef is Yaakov's first son from his favorite wife, from his beloved. So we pick it up here. So chapter 37, verse 1. And I'm just going to read through. Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz migorei aviv be'eretz Kinaan. שנה היה רואה את אחיו בסון, והוא נער את בני בלהה ואת בני זלפה שמה אל אביהם. verse 3. וישראל אהב את יוסף מכל בניו, כי בן זקונים הוא לו, ועשה לו כתונת פסים. ויראו אחיו כי אותו אהב אביהם מכל אחיו, וישנאו אותו, ולא יכלו דברו בשלום. verse 5. וחלום יוסף חלום, ויגע לאחיו, ויוסף להם, שמעו נא החלום הזה אשר חלמתי, והנה אנחנו מאלמים עלומים בתוך השדה, והנה קמה אלומתי ורם ניסבה, והנה תוסבנה אלומותיכם, ותשתחוונה לאלומתי. ויאמרו לו אחיו, המלוך תמלוך עלינו, אם משול תמשול בנו. והוסיפו עוד שנוא אותו על חלומותיו ועל דבריו. verse 9. וחלום עוד חלום אחר, עוד, והנה השמש והירח ו11 כוכבים משתחווים לי. ויספר אל אביו ואל אחיו, ויגער בו אביו, ויאמר לו, מה החלום הזה אשר חלמת? נבוא אני ויקנאו בו אחיו, ואביו שמר את הדבר. verse 12. וילכו אחיו לראות את צאן אביהם בשכם, ויאמר ישראל אל יוסף, הלא אחיך רואים בשכם? לך ושלחך עליהם. ויאמר לו, הנה נראה את עמך ואת שלום אסון, השיבני דבר, ושלחהו מעמק חברון ויבוא שכמה. verse 15. ויסדהו האיש לאמור, מה תבקש? אומר, את החי אנוכי מבקש, הגידה נא לי איפה הם רואים. ויאמר האיש, נסו מזה, כי שמעתי אומרים, נלכה דותיאנה, וילך יוסף אחר אחיו, וימצאם בדותן. ויראו אותו מרחוק, ובטרם יקרב עליהם, ויתנכלו אותו להעמיד. על זה בא, ותהלכו ונהרהו ונשליכהו באחד הבורות, ואמרנו, היה רעה אכלתהו, אכלתהו, ונראה מה יהיה חלומותיו. ותילהו מידם, ויאמר לא נקנו נפש. ויאמר עליהם ראובן, אל תשפכו דם, השליכו אותו אל הבור הזה אשר במדבר, ויד אל תשלחו בו, למען הציל אותו מידם להשיבו אל אביו. verse 23. ויהי כאשר בא יוסף אל אחיו, ויפשיט ייקחוהו וישליכו אותו הבורה, והבור ריק, אין בו מים. Verse 25. Verse 25. וישבו לאכול לחם, ויסור עיניהם, ויראו, הנה אורחת ישמעאלים באה. הם נכרות וצרי ועלות, הולכים להוריד מצרימה. ואומר יהודה אל אחיו, מה בצע כי נהרוג את אחינו, וכיסינו את דמו. לכו ונמכרנו לישמעאלים ויעדנו אל תהי בו, כי אחינו בשרנו הוא, וישמעו אחיו. סוחרים וימשכו ויעלו את יוסף מן הבאר וימכרו את יוסף לישמעאלים 20 כסף והביאו את יוסף מצרימה. וישב ראובן אל הבור והנה אין יוסף בבור ויקרע את בגדיו וישב אל אחיו אל אחיו ויאמר הילד איננו ואני אנא את יוסף וישחטו שעיר עזים וידברו את כתונת בדם וישלחו את כתונת הפסים ויביאו אל אביהם ויאמרו זאת מצאנו הקרנת הכתונת בנך היא אם לא ויקירה טרף יוסף ויקרא יעקב שמלותיו וישם שק במותניו ויתאבל על בנו ימים רבים. Verse 35 יקומו כל בניו כל בנותיו לנחמו ימען להתנחם ויאמר כי ארד אל בני אבל שאולה אמיר מחתו את מצרים לפוטיפר סריס פרעה שר הטבחים. That's the end of chapter 37. On 38. ויהי בעת ההיא וירד יהודה מאת אחיו וית עד איש אדולמי ושמו חירה ירא שם יהודה בת איש כנעני שמו שועה ויקרא ותהר ותלד בן ויקרא שמו ער ותער עוד ותלד בן ותקרא את שמו עונן ותוסף עוד ותלד בן ותקרא את שמו שלה וחיה בכזיב בלידתה אותו. ויקח יהודה אישה לער בכורו שמה תמר והיא ער בכור יהוה יאמר בוא אל אשת אחיך ויבם אותה ועקם זרע לאחיך. Verse 9 וידע עונן כי לא יהיה הזרע והיה אם בא אל אשת אחיו ושחטת צלבתי נתן זרע לאחיו וירא בעיני יהוה אשר עשה וימת גם אותו. ויאמר יהודה תמר בני כי אמר פן ימות גם הוא כאחיו ותלך תמר ותשב בית אביה. וירבו בתמר אשת יהודה וינחם יהודה יעל על גוזזי צונו הוא וחירה על רעהו הדולמי. אתה. הנה, המיכה עולה תמנעת לגוז צונו, ותסר בגדי על מנותה מעליה, ותכס בסעיף, ותתעלה שבפתח עיניים דרך לה, כי ראתה כי גדל שלה, והיא לא ניתנה לו לאישה. Verse 15, וירא יהודה ויחשביה לזונה כי כיסתה פניה, ויית עליה אל הדרך, ויאמר הבה נא אבוא עלייך, כי לא ידע כלתו, אלא אשלח גדי עזים מן הצאן, תאמר אם תיתן ערבון עד שלחך. Verse 18, ויאמר מה הערבון אשר אתן לך, ותאמר חותמך ופתילך בוא אליה ותהר לו. Verse 19, ותקם ותלך ותסר צעיפה מעליה ותלבש בגדי אלמנותה. Verse 20, וישלח יהודה את גדי העזים ביד רעהו הדולמי, לקח את הערבון לא שקומה כמו אישה היא בעיניים על הדרך. יאמר לא הייתה בזה קדשה. ושב אל יהודה ויאמר לא מצאתי לא הייתה בזה קדשה. יאמר יהודה כי תיקח לה פן נהיה לבוז. הנה שלחתי הגדי הזה ואתה לא מצאתה. Verse 24, ויהי כי 3 חודשים יהודה לאמור וגם הנה הרע לזנונים, יאמר יהודה הוציאוה ותשרף, היא מוצאת והיא שלחה אל חמיה לאמור הכר למי החותמת והפתילים והמטה האלה. ויקר יהודה ויאמר צדקה ממני, כי על כן לא נתתיה לשלה בני ולא עוד. Okay, we are in chapter 38, verse 27. ויהי בעת לידתה, והנה תאומים בבטנה, כי בלידתה תיתן יד, על ידו שני אריה, ויהי כמשיב ידו, הנה אחיו ותאומים. עליך השני ויקרא שמו זרח. Chapter 39. יוסף הורד מצרימה ויקנהו פוטיפר סריס פרעה שר את היא יהוה את יוסף ויהי איש מצליח היא בבית אדוניו המצרי. וירא אדוניו כי יהוה איתו וכל אשר הוא עושה יהוה מצליח בידו. וימצא יוסף חן וישרת אותו ויפקדהו בידו ויפקיד אותו בביתו ועל כל אשר יש לו, ויברך יהוה את בית המצרי בגלל יוסף, ויהי ברכת יהוה בכל אשר יש לו בבית ובשדה. זו אומה אשר הוא אוכל, ויהי יוסף יפה תואר ויפה מראה. Chapter 39 verse 7. ויהי אחר הדברים האלה ותישא אשת אדוניו את פניה שכבה עמי וימאן ויאמר אל אשת אדוניו, הן אדוני לא ידע איתי מה בבית, וכל שיש לו נתן בידי, איננו גדול בבית הזה ממני, ולא חסך ממני מאומה, כי אם אותך באשר את אשתו, ואיך אעשה הרעה גדולה הזאת וחטאתי לאלוהים. Verse 10. ויהי כי דברה אל יוסף יום יום, ולא שמע אליה, לשכב אצלה להיות אימה. ויהי כהיום הזה, ויבוא הביתה, איש מבית, ותתפסהו בבגדו, לאמור, שכבה עמי, יעזוב בגדו בידה, וינס, ויצא החוצה. Verse 13. ויהי כראותה, כזב בגדו בידה, וינס החוצה, קרא לאנשי ביתה, בא אליי לשכב עמי, וקרא בקול גדול, ויהי כשמעו הרגוני קול, ויקרא, ויעזוב בגדו אצלי, וינס ויצא החוצה, ותנח בגדו אצלה, עד בו אדוניו אל ביתו, ותדבר אליו כדברים האלה לאמור, בא אליי העבד העברי אשר הבאת עליו, היא כהרימי קול ואקרא ויעזוב בגדו אצלי וינס החוצה. ויהי כשמוע אדוניו את דברי אשתו אשר דיברה אליו לאמור כדברים האלה עשה לי עמך כך אדוני יוסף אותו, ויתנהו אל בית הסוהר מקום אשר אסירי המלך אסורים, ויהי שם בבית הסוהר, ויהי יהוה את יוסף ויית אליו חסד, ויתן חינום בעיני שר בית הסוהר, ויתן שר ביד יוסף את כל אשר ואת כל אשר עושים שם הוא היה עושה. אין שר בית הסוהר רואה את כל מאומה בידו באשר יהוה איתו, ואשר הוא עושה יהוה מצליח. And we're going up to, let's see, chapter 40, verse 23. So the end of this chapter is the end of the parsha. Not a particularly long parsha. Chapter 40, verse 1. Wahi achar dvarim ha'ele hatu mashke melech Mitzrayim v'ha'ofeh la'adonem lemelech Mitzrayim la'adonem lemelech Mitzrayim. ויקצוף פרעה על שני סריסיו, על שר המשקים ועל שר האופים, ויתן אותם במשמר בית שר הטבחים אל בית הסוהר, מקום אשר יוסף אסור שם. ויפקוד שר הטבחים את יוסף איתם, וישרת אותם, ויהיו ימים במשמר. יחלמו חלום שניהם, איש חלומו בלילה. אחד איש כפתרון חלומו. המשקה והאופה אשר למלך מצרים, אשר אסורים בבית הסוהר. ויבוא עליהם יוסף בבוקר וירא אותם, והנה זועפים. וישאל את סריסי פרעה אשר איתו במשמר בית אדוניו לאמור, מדוע פניכם רעים היום? verse 8, ויאמרו אליו, חלום חלמנו, ופותר אין אותו. יאמר עליהם יוסף, הלא לאלוהים פתרונים? ספרו נא לי. verse 9, ויספר שר המשקים את חלומו ועל יוסף ליוסף, ויאמר לו בחלומי, הנה גפן לפניי. בגפן 3 שריגים, ויהי כפורחת עלתה ניצה, הבשילו אשכלותי הענבים, וכוס פרעה בידי, ויקח את הענבים ואשחט אותם אל כוס פרעה, ותן את הכוס אל כף פרעה. אומר לו יוסף, זה פתרונו, 3 השריגים 3 ימים הם, ועוד 3 ימים יישא פרעה את ראשך, ואשיבך על קרניך, ונתת כוס פרעה בידו כמשפט הראשון אשר היית משקהו. כי אם זכרתני איתך כאשר ייטב לך, ועשית נא עמדי חסד, והזכרתני אל פרעה, והוצאתני מן הבית הזה, כי גונבתי מארץ העברים, וגם פה לא עשיתי מאומה, כי שמו אותי בבור. verse 16, וירא שר האופים כי טוב פתר, ויאמר אל יוסף, אני בחלומי, והנה 3 סלי חורי על ראשי, ובסל העליון מכל מאכל פרעה מעשה אופה, והעוף אוכל אותם מן הסל מעל ראשי. יען יוסף ויאמר, זה פתרונו, 3 הסלים 3 ימים הם, בעוד 3 ימים יישא פרעה את ראשך מעליך, ותלה אותך על עץ, ואכל העוף את בשרך מעליך. ייקס. ויהי ביום השלישי יום הולדת את פרעה, ויעש משתה לכל עבדיו, וישא את ראש שר המשקים ואת ראש שר האופים בתוך עבדיו, שב את שר המשקים על משקהו, ותן הכוס על כף פרעה, ואת שר האופים תלה את יוסף וישכחהו. And that, my friends, is the end of the parsha. Huh? Excellent. Hello, Nelson.
Hi, Melech.
Hi, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Great. It's great to hear you.
It's great to hear you too. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I joined relatively late, but I see that it's on this week's parsha with Joseph and his brothers, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, we're following the typical Ashkenazi schedule because why not? Obviously, I don't think there's anything canonical about it, as I mentioned at the beginning of the study. But it's a way to kind of stay synced with most of. Well, actually, I didn't even start it. The Hakham who used to do the show with me, Yaakov ben Yisrael, he was the one who instituted this idea, and I'm basically just following it because I think it's a good enough idea just to follow along the regular parsha. So anyway, we just finished reading. What I've been doing lately is I've been reading through the parsha and then going back over it more slowly and discussing it. So just finished reading it, and so you came just in time to go back and discuss it. And I'm actually very happy you came because you have a lot of very, very interesting insights. I always like listening to what you have to say in our
Thanks.
discussions. So I'm glad you're here. It's much better when there's an actual discussion than me just talking behind into a mic. So basically, it's chapters 37, 38, 39, and 40. So we can go back to chapter 37.
Mm-hmm.
And any questions you have or any comments you want to make, please just feel free to jump in. In fact, I encourage it. Also, with Hanukkah, and I'll try to, time permitting, I'll try to speak about that as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The short answer is yes. I celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah was, if you read the first book of Maccabees, I believe it's the end of chapter 5. The Maccabees who cleansed the Temple Mount, they instituted the 8-day celebration of Hanukkah from year to year. So since I'm a big fan of the Maccabees, there's no reason for me not to respect their wishes of laying down this holiday. Now, what should you do on this holiday? It speaks about days of celebration, and it's basically supposed to be just 8 celebratory days. It obviously doesn't speak anything about the Hanukkah menorah, which only came much later. I think it's first.
Yeah, with like the 8 days of oil and so forth.
Right. So they invented that. Yeah, that's what they put on the dreidel. Hanukkah. Because I respect and love what the Maccabees did in cleansing the temple, as is laid down in the first and second book of Maccabees. They chased the Greeks away, and they purified the temple. They broke down the old altar. They rebuilt the new altar, and they instituted an 8-day celebration. So I do celebrate it. How do I celebrate it? I don't know, just by remembering it each day. But honestly, I also light the Hanukkah menorah. I obviously don't say a blessing, or I obviously don't believe that it's connected to any kind of oil miracle. This is just purely, I guess, you would say, nostalgic, because when I grew up in my family during Hanukkah, of course, we would always light the Hanukkah menorah. So I just do it out of nostalgia and nothing more. I like the idea of, I like candles in general, and it's a good way to count the 8 days and to put some remembrance for it. I suppose I could stack up 8 stones, one each day, or just do a little dance each day or something like that. But that's what I do for nostalgic reasons. But of course, to the rabbis, when they do it, they say a blessing, where they basically say that God commanded them to do this, and that's already heretical.
Yeah.
That's already yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. And we could actually go later into the book of Maccabees and look at those verses and a little bit more if you want. So
sure.
Yep. All right. So let's get back to Genesis chapter 37. And we'll read through the verses, and anything we have to say or anything you want to point out, please do. Okay. So chapter 37, verse 1. Let me put this back on. Do it like that, I think. Okay. All right. So, Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. So, Yaakov dwelled in the land of his father's sojournings. Okay, note the word migurei, which always means kind of a temporary sojourning or a temporary living. Be'eretz Canaan. Okay, so where is Yaakov? Let's go back a little bit and see exactly where Yaakov is, just to get things in perspective. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we have here. So Yaakov meets Esav. That's what we read last week. And maybe, actually, just to make it flow a little bit quicker. I'm just going to put it in English just so we can focus on the story rather than on the words. Where was it? What happened? That's weird. Okay, I was reading. Okay, so Yaakov is in Shechem after he'd come back from Padan Aram. Right, he had this whole thing where he wrestled with the angel, and
Yeah.
this was on the other side of the Jabbok, or the Jordan River, and now he crosses right after that. Then he crosses back into the land of Israel. Let me just see here.
And so Shechem is modern day Nablus, right?
Here it is. Yaakov Nasas. Yeah. Shechem is, they also, in Hebrew, they'll just call it Shechem. And I guess the Arabs, they call it Nablus. As Rabbi Kahana always used to point out, that comes from the Roman word Napolis. I guess it was named after Naples, Napoli in Italy. I believe. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, they call it Nablus, and we call it Shechem.
Mm-hmm.
So after he came from Padan Aram, let me just see here. עולו מיד בני חמור אביו שכם במאה כסיתה. זה שם מזבח יקרא לו אל אלוהים. So then he builds an altar in Shechem. Then we have the whole. So the person who actually defiles Dinah is named Shechem, right? Yerarota Shechem ben Chamor, Achivi, Nasi Haaretz, V'yikach ota v'yishkav ota v'yaneha. So Shechem. So I guess this is the area. I guess it's named after this king, Shechem ben Chamor, and or he's named after the area, or the area is named after him, or it's a common name. It's a tribe, maybe the Shechem tribe, and the area is named after them. At any rate, so the person who actually ends up defiling Dinah is also named Shechem, right? And so we have the whole story here. And then Dinah's brothers take revenge. And another thing that in Kahana circles, they always used to point out something very interesting. So I'm not a Kahanist, I should point. You know who Rabbi Kahana is, right?
Is that yeah, the ultra Zionist rabbi that was assassinated?
Yeah, correct. So I went through a Kahana stage where I basically traveled around in those circles when I was in Israel. And I still agree with a lot of what he has to say, but obviously I don't agree with everything because he's a rabbi and I'm not. So, but it was something that was always pointed out that was very interesting in those Kahana circles. I'll just point out very quickly. So Yaakov and his family's in Shechem, and then Levi and Shimon, they go ahead and they basically wipe out the entire village. And let's just see here. Shimon and Levi katamoti. So yeah, they come back to Yaakov. Yaakov finds out, just very briefly, וכל חילה וכל טפם ואת נשים שבו ויבוזו את כל אשר בבית. So then they took the women and the children as captives, as spoils of war, and they basically destroyed the place. Okay, and so what does Yaakov say? Yomer Yaakov el Shimon el Levi. So now Yaakov says to Shimon and Levi. I'm sorry, did I say Reuben and Shimon? It was Shimon and Levi who did it. So what does he say? You've uprooted me, and made me stink, and literally made me become stinky or smelly. You've made me odious among the inhabitants of the land. of the area. And he mentions the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And I am very small in number. My household is very small in number. And these people will and they'll kill me. And I and my household will be destroyed. And they responded, should this person treat our sister like a whore? So, but what's interesting is and I don't want to focus too much on this because it's last week's parsha, but this is all just to go over where Yaakov is when this week's parsha takes place. But Yaakov, what is his complaint about what Shimon Levi did? I mean, they basically they basically committed genocide against the entire town.
Basically, like
Yaakov doesn't say anything along the lines of, I think he's worried that they're going to take revenge on him. He doesn't say, these horrible moral act that you did, committing, wiping out an entire town and killing all the inhabitants when only it was Shechem who slept with Dinah and basically burning their city to the ground. And no, he doesn't say anything about that. He just says, listen, you've done something really, really stupid here. These people are gonna take revenge on me, and they're gonna destroy me and my entire household. So basically I won't even say it, the GT blank blank. Let's get out of here before these people take revenge on us. So and then Jacob goes, he leaves Shechem. Yomer Elohim el Yaakov kum ale Beit El. So then actually God comes to Yaakov and says, go now to Beit El. Okay, as we mentioned in the previous parshas, Beit El is a major place in Yaakov's life, right? So Nelson, you know what happened at Beit El?
So that's like the house of God. That's where God basically appeared to him, and he's seen the angels coming up and down.
Exactly. That's where he had the big dream when he was running away from Esav on his way back
at
to
the
Haran.
Beginning of his.
Yep. Exactly. When he was still young and a youth, and however old he was, and he ran away from Esav after stealing the birthright. Exactly. So he came to Bethel, and that's where he had the dream. So now he's coming back so now God tells him to go back to Bethel. So go back there. So God is commanding him, go back there and make an altar to God, who appeared to you as you ran away from Esav, your brother. So now he's going back to this major place in his life, because there he basically took the stones, if you remember, that he used for pillows or that he put around him maybe to protect him from animals, and he made not an altar, but he anointed one and made like a little they call it a standing stone or a matzeva, right? A pillar.
Yeah.
So and then he took an oath to God, basically saying, if you protect me, then you'll be my God, and I will tithe to you, right? So now he's going back to this major place. He hasn't been back to Bethel in over 20 years, because that's how long he was at with Lavan. And now he's coming back, and he's going back to this major place, this place basically where you could say this was like the beginning of his independent life. Like in America at 18, you get thrown out of the house and you go to some stupid college like I did. And that's the beginning of your life as an independent human being. You're out of your parents' house for the first time. Well, Yaakov was beginning his life as an independent human being was basically at Bethel, and that's where he basically started his journey, his independent journey in life. And so now,
and now he's basically coming right
back there for the first time in 20 years. Broke up. Hello.
So it's basically coming full circle for him.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically kind of coming full circle, right? Exactly. He's now back in the land. He was in Shechem for a while, who knows how long, and now he's heading on back to Bethel, which is like his base. Bethel is like his base in that's like his Jerusalem, I guess you could say. And by the way, as I spoke about in, I guess it was 2 weeks parshas ago, there is evidence, I would say, there is kind of some hidden evidence in the Torah, and I don't usually like to go by quote unquote hidden evidence, but Bet El might actually be the Temple Mount, might actually be Jerusalem. Although archaeologists don't believe Bet El is Jerusalem. They've associated with a I believe an Arab village called Betin, which is near Jerusalem. But anyway, I won't go into that now because we're going to get way too far off track. But there are a lot of little hints, such as this is the house of God. That's why it's Bethel, and this is obviously this is the place where God lives, and it's the gate to heaven. And there are a number of other hints there, which are very very kind of suspicious. So it might actually be kind of embedded into the story of Bethel, this kind of prophecy, I guess you would say, in the Torah, looking ahead that this is going to be the place eventually where David and Solomon are going to where Solomon's going to build it. At any rate, so yeah, so there he is. Now he's back in Bethel. Okay, Yomed Yaakov el Beitov. And okay, so we have all this. So Yisuvi, Chitat Delhim El Arim. Okay, so then we have this little story about getting rid of the idols that they brought with them. Yisuvi Chitat Delhim Baba Lo Yaakov, which was called Luz previously, and he built his altar as he's commanded to, and then he calls the place El Bet El. Previously he called it Bet El, and now he calls it El Bet El, basically the same name. Tamat Dvorah, okay, and then Dvorah's maidservant dies. Okay, then. So, one second. Right. So now, Jacob is already been named. Wait a second. Vayera Elohim el Yaakov od mipadan aram v'yavarech oto. So now God comes to him and says, once again, your name is Israel. Remember the angel when he'd wrestled with him. One second. Right. The angel, when he had wrestled with him, already told him his name is going to be Israel. So now God comes to him and reinforces that and says the land is going to be yours. It said Yaakov matziva b'makom asher dibor b'matzefet even v'yasech alav minesach v'yitzok alav shemen v'yikra Yaakov et shem ha'makom asher diber eto shem Bet-El. So this is all happening at Bet-El. Then Benjamin is born, Rachel dies, and then Isaac dies. Okay, so it would seem, one second, one second, okay. So it seems that, okay, so then Yitzchak was Yaakov El Yitzchak Mamre Kiryat Arba Chevron Asher Gasham Avraham Yitzchak. So now Yaakov comes to Yitzchak. Now he comes back to his father, right? Here.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time he's seeing his father. He hasn't yet seen his father since he came back into the land.
And so this is like prior, right before, so he's there to bury him and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it would seem, well, if you follow it, okay, so we know that, one second. So Rachel dies on the way on Ephrat, which is which is a little bit, it's basically between Jerusalem and Hebron. So it would seem, okay, so now he's going from Bethel. Here we have in verse 16, he's going from Bethel to Ephrat. Okay, and that's when Rachel gives birth to Binyamin, and she dies in Ephrat. So now he's left Bethel, which is north of Jerusalem. He's in Ephrat, which is south of Jerusalem. It's between Jerusalem and Hebron. So Yaakov is on his way to Hebron, where Isaac has been living, where his father Isaac has been living. right?
Yeah.
Then we have this whole story about Reuven sleeping with Bilhah. And then finally, he gets to his father Isaac. V'yavo Yaakov el Yitzchak aviv mamre kiryat ha'arba hi Hebron asher gasham Avraham u'Yitzchak. And then, so he finally gets to his father, back to his father, right? It doesn't mention before anywhere of him seeing his father. He's been in the land for a while, but he hasn't seen his father yet. I mean, if he has, it hasn't mentioned. He's been in the north in Shechem, then in Bethel, then in Ephrat. So he's making his way towards Hebron, and then finally he gets back to Hebron, and obviously sees his father, and then Yitzchak dies. It's interesting, they don't talk about any great reunion between Yaakov and Yitzchak, right?
Yeah. So that is interesting. I mean, I know that usually for stuff like this, like within rabbinite circles, they have things like the Midrash, and so the Midrash always goes off with like Abraham and Ishmael's interactions and so forth. But like you said, like that's later, and it seems to be like adding to the text. It's you can't really find it there. It just kind of cuts to the end.
Right. I mean, there's no evidence here whatsoever that, I can't remember now what all the Midrashim said. I'm sure they have a lot to say. I'm sure they embellish the story greatly. But in the Torah, basically we have it. Yaakov gets back to Hebron, and then at a certain time after that, Yitzchak dies. There's no great reunion of him, seeing his father again, just as, they describe in detail the great reunion between Yaakov and Yosef. But here it doesn't really mention it. It just says he went back to his father's house, and then at a certain point
He
afterwards,
buried
it would
him.
seem his father died, and that's it. And he buried him. Yeah. Yeah. And Esav and Yaakov buried him. Okay. So then he saw Esav again. Remember, he ditched Esav back in where was it? Back in
It was like 32 or 31.
Yeah, in Peniel, where he wrestled with the angel. He wrestled with the angel before he had seen, right before he saw Esav. He sent the gifts ahead, and then he wrestled with the angel, and then he runs to Esav, and then Esav says, "Hey, come on, why don't you travel with me?" And Yaakov makes some excuse, and then he ditches Esav.
And he goes the other way.
Yeah. Yep. He sure does. So he goes to Sukkot, right? It says, and which is already in the land of Israel. So now he's seeing Esav for the first time, and that's it. And Yitzchak is dying, or Yitzchak dies, and that's it. That's pretty much the end of that part of the story. And then verse 36, we just go through all the descendants of Esav in detail, which is interesting in its own right, but we're not going to deal with it here. And now we come to the next generation. Now we start focusing no longer on Yaakov so much, but now the focus shifts over to Yosef. So this is kind of this is kind of the changing of the guard here, right? Up until here. So we have, this is basically, all of this has to do with Jacob. And let's see. This is all Jacob. And this is Isaac. And so on. Okay, we'll go back. I wanted to try to see if there was some interesting consistency, but it's going to take too long. Okay, so anyway, so here we are. Now we're in chapter 37. This is the beginning of this week's Parsha. The baton is passed. The focus shifts away from Esav, from Yaakov. What I did want to point out, though, I guess, is that it's interesting that after the Yaakov story ends, then we have this long genealogy. And I think this is common after, the end of a generation. The Torah gives these long genealogies, right? And then
like Ishmael is given as well. I think in the following chapter, or I could be wrong. I think that was for Parshat Toldot. Yeah,
that was back a bit, but I I just want to see if there was a consistency there, that at the end of each person's generation, like before the baton shifts to the next generation, if they do a kind of a genealogy, it would seem like a good interlude at that time, right? And to kind of sum things up. And well, at any rate, that's what they do here. And I'm not going to run back through it right now and look at it. But at any rate, so now the baton shifts. We're in the generation of Joseph, and from here on, basically the focus is on Joseph, no longer on. I mean, Yaakov is obviously mentioned a lot. The other children are mentioned a lot, but the focus from now on is Joseph, and this is pretty much the focus from now until, I guess you could say, until the reunion, and then it shifts back to, I guess, to the entire family back in Egypt. Yaakov getting ready to die and the blessings and all that kind of stuff. And then the book of Genesis ends. So here we are in Joseph's dreams. And we'll start here. So Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz migorei aviv. Okay, so here we are be'eretz Canaan. So now we've located Yaakov once again. He's made his way back to Hebron, where his father Yitzhak was, and Yitzhak has now died. Okay? Ele Toldot Yaakov, and then we go through the generations of Yaakov. Ele Toldot Yaakov, Yosef ben 17 shana, haya ro'eh et achiv b'tzaon. So Yosef was 17 years old, and he was herding the sheep with his brothers. Et achiv v'hu na'ar et b'nei v'hu na'ar, in the story, and he was a young man. He was a youth. See, they just said he was 17 years old. Let me just want to see something. Young man of 17. That's how they translate it. That's how they deal with that. Okay. Okay. So, 1 second here. See, that's interesting. I don't know. Something is very. 1 second. This almost seems like a verb, na'ar. Even though, let me just see something here. Let me get a couple of different translations. Where did they get all these translations? There's a page where it has a whole bunch of different translations. Parallel. I think it's this one. Yeah. I don't want 37.1. I want 37.2. Let's go back to that. We'll go to 37.2. Okay. Young man, there's 17. There's 17. He worked for his half brothers. Interesting. 1 second here. Just notice something. I'll explain in a second what I'm doing here. So, yeah, so it does. 1 second here. No, just give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay, it's just a kind of very strange construction here in the Hebrew, because, okay, I'm just trying to parse this in my mind. So it says, Ele toldot Yaakov, Yosef ben 17 shana haya. So these are the generations of Yaakov. Yosef was 17 years old. Haya ro'eh et achiv b'tzaon. He was herding the flocks with his brothers, et achiv. Behu na'ar et b'nei bilha et b'nei zilpa nashe aviv. Okay, I don't know. Forget it. I'm chasing down a rabbit hole, and I'm just going to forget it. Okay, I'll look it up myself later. So, okay, so Yosef brings back a bad word, dibatam ra. He brings back literally their bad word or their bad report to their father. So he brings back a bad report about the sons of the concubines, Bnei Bilhan, Bnei Zilpah. And notice here that he's not talking about. So Yosef. Okay, yeah. So he's with the sons of the concubines. He's not with with Binyamin, or he's not with the sons of Leah. He's just with the sons of the concubine, and he brings back a bad report about them. Yisrael ahavit Yosef, and then it mentions that Israel loved Yosef more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Masalo ketonet pasim. And so he made him this ketonet pasim, how do you say ketonet in English again? I guess it's robe, literally the striped robe, right? Robe, pasim,
Yeah,
stripes.
that's a famous one that
Many-
people call
many
Joseph
colors.
and his Technicolor robe.
Exactly. That was actually, I believe, that was a Broadway play
Yeah.
on Broadway. Joseph in his Technicolor robe. I think that's where. And they translate as many colors, but pasim. Let's see here. Ketonet pasim, rasha ketonet pasim asher aleha. So that's interesting. It's always translated as a many colored robe, pasim, or striped robe. So you always picture it as like these stripes of different colors. Underfoot, ketonet pasim, reaching to the palms and the soles. But here, according at least to the BDB, pas, flat of the hand or of the foot. So flat of the hand or foot. So it's a tunic reaching to the palms and soles. That's interesting. That's interesting. Huh. Ketonet, unless maybe it says in another place, I don't remember right now, but this ketonet pasim, it doesn't say anything here about colors, right? All it says is ketonet pasim. Pas in modern Hebrew, pas is like a stripe. So that's why I always thought of it as a striped, robe with these stripes of various colors.
Striped.
But here, yeah, it seems to be something else. So tunic reaching to the palms or the soles. And then we have in a number of places, okay, so we have here the ketonet pasim asher lav, ketonet pasim v'yaviu el. So this is all having to do with Genesis. This is all having to do with the Joseph story. In fact, in this chapter. And then here we have aleh ketonet pasim kichen. In Samuel 13, we have someone else who's wearing a ketonet pasim. So let's check that out for a second. Oops. Let's check that out for a second. Oh, I keep on opening in a new window instead of a new tab. Open link in new tab. So what is going on here? Well, I'll just so this is 13:18 in 2 Samuel. Just to get the context, let's just bring it in English. So this is with Amnon and Tamar. So this is with Amnon and Tamar. You know the story of Amnon and Tamar, I'm sure.
Yeah,
right?
and how Absalom, her brother, avenged her because of what happened to her.
Correct. Yep. Amnon basically rapes Tamar, and then later on, Avshalom, her full brother, right? Same mother and same father, as Tamar, takes revenge on him with this. He invites all of the king's sons to a banquet, and then he ends up and then he kills Amnon there. Okay, but he refused to listen. He called a personal servant, get this woman out of my sight. So this is right after he rapes her. This is such a deep insight into psychology, right? He just is totally
the guilt that
totally in
overtook
love
him.
with this woman. He wants her. What's that?
There was, he had like you said,
Nancy, go ahead.
he wanted her, and the temptation was there, and as soon as he caved into it, then he began, the disgust set in, and he began to view her as like an object of scorn and disgust after he had done what he did.
Yeah, it says he hated her even more than he loved her. And right, and it's just such a, it's this kind of this I don't know, it's such a, I think, a deep insight into human psychology. Let's use a more, a less colorful example. Let's say a child sees a toy in Toys R Us or something like that, and they want it more than anything else. All their friends are getting it, and finally they get it and they play with it for a moment or two, and then they discard it and they can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost like that same kind of mentality going on here. But at any rate, so it mentions a Ketonet Pasim. So here, and this is in 18. Get this woman out of my sight and bolt the door after. So a servant put her out and bolted the door after she was wearing an ornate robe. So here it's interesting. They translated, this is the same translation. This is the NIV, which I just use because it's decent and it's convenient. Now they don't translate it as a multicolored robe. They translate it as an ornate robe. There's a little footnote here. What does the footnote say? The meaning of the word for the Hebrew for this word is uncertain, also in verse 19. So isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
maybe you could check like the so I mean, if it's the same phrase that's used for the Kitonot Pasim, it's quite interesting because you see that it says that virgins wear this, and then Joseph is given the same kind from his father. I don't know if I'm grasping at straws here, but Joseph was also described as a young man, and he was prized by his father. And I'm pretty sure, virgins in ancient Israel and even now within the Jewish community are very prized. But to say and denote that this is something that virgins wore in general. And
let me see. Where does it say that?
Scroll up. It's like around that same. It's around verse 18. So.
All right. Let's see.
For this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters.
The virgin daughters of the king wore. Interesting. Yeah. I'll put it answers. Huh. Okay. Interesting. Well, let's look at it in the Hebrew for a second.
Mm-hmm.
In 18, and well, we don't have to go back that far. ותאמר לו, על אודות הרעה הגדולה הזאת מאחרת אשר עשית עמי לשכן, no, we don't have to go back that far. ויקרא את נערו משרתו ויאמר שיכו נא את זאת מעלה ועלה כתונת פסים, אוקיי? כי כן תלבשנה בנות המלך, and here's what you refer to, because such was what the daughters of the king, the virgin daughters of the king wore. Mi'ilim יוצא אותה, wait, let me get this in context. ועלה כתונת הפסים כי כן תלבשנה בנות המלך הבתולים מי'iלים, יוצא אותה משרתו החוץ ונעה לדלת אחריה ותיקח תמר אפר על ראשה כתונת הפסים אשר עליה קרה, and here she rips this כתונת הפסים, right?
Yeah.
ותשים ידה על ראשה, and she puts her hand on her head ותלך הלוך וזעקה, and she runs around crying with her hands on, screaming with her hands on her head, rightfully so. So what's interesting here, okay, so getting back to what's relevant here is we have this Ketonet Pasim, okay? We always assume it's this multicolored robe, this technicolored robe, or this robe of stripes with different colors. I did until just 10 minutes ago, and really know what the word pasim means, right? I mean, we can investigate a little bit more. But here we go with the BDB, which is pretty good. So it's a tunic reaching to the palms and soles, comes from the word pas, which means the flat or the hand of the hand or the foot, basically like the kaf, what they would call also in the Tanakh. And so this Ketonet Pasim is, we don't even really know what it means. Okay, that's interesting. The word pas, as we see here, appears only in those 2 places, and appears in 2 places in the, well, 5 instances, but 2 different places in the Tanakh. One is when it's speaking about the Ketonet Pasim of Yosef, which is translated as a very colored tunic, right? And then the same translation, both the NIV translation, they translate it as a long sleeve garment. So we don't really know. So there's really no indication here to call it a multicolored or a striped garment.
Yeah, it's
in
quite
modern
interesting.
Hebrew, as I mentioned, pas means a stripe. Yep.
So what about the word the kitonot part? What does that mean?
So ketonet is just a robe, and that's already mentioned. For instance, the chief Cohen wears a ketonet. From an unused word, tunic, Aramaic, tuna, Ethiopic, tunic. Right, so it's a tunic.
So that is interesting, because then it goes back to what you said about pasim. There's nothing in either words or in the entire phrase that indicates that it's a multicolored.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Unless I'm forgetting, and maybe later on down it describes it as having multicolors. I don't think so, though. I don't think so. Yeah. And what's the origin of the word ketonet? Ketonet. This with a kaf. Ketonet or. Here, this is the first use of the word ketonet. The damali shtok ketonet or v'yalbishem. So this is where God makes Adam and Eve a garment. There they translate it as garment or tunic out of leather. That's in the Garden of Eden when they suddenly notice after they notice they're naked, right?
Yeah.
Ketonet,
so that's for ketonet.
Yeah, that's ketonet. Spitz. Well, here it says, interesting. Okay. Ketonet. Pasim, no, it doesn't say anything about a multicolored at all. Now here in Exodus we have keton. Let me just change. Okay, we can do it this way. In Exodus is a ketonet tashbetz, referring to what exactly? Of the Levites. These are the garments that they make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe. So there's the robe that's ketonet, a woven tunic. No, this is I think this is the one that's referring to woven tunic. Okay, so these are the priestly garments, and there it says a ketonet tashbetz. Tashbetz, at least in modern Hebrew, I'd have to look it up. Means like kind of a checkerboard pattern. In fact, I think they translate it as such here, checkered work. So yeah, it's very interesting. It just goes to show, and I don't know where this idea of a multicolored robe came from. Did it come from the rabbinical literature? Did it come from later the Christian literature? Is it something recent? Maybe there was a book that was written in the 17th century where it's described as a multicolored robe, and then it worked its way into the common understanding. It's interesting because I guess the point here, and it's such an important point, and as a Karaite, the way I always try to study the Torah is we have to realize that every single word we're reading in the Tanakh and the Torah, we have often have a preconceived notion about and there's and we always have a preconceived notion about what it means, and sometimes we don't even know where these preconceived notions come from, because the Torah's been around for thousands of years, and so many different societies and people have added their little, their little piece into it. Is sometimes we don't even know where it comes from. So I'd be curious to know where this idea of a multicolored coat comes from. Let's just dig a little bit deeper. This is the kind of stuff I like to do. Let's just take a look at Rashi and see if he mentions anything. Let's take a look at Rashi. So then I've got to go to Sefaria. And we go to Tanakh. And we go to Genesis. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, so let's go Sefaria, and we go down here, and I think they have the Rashi. No, we're going to go Torah portions. Okay, we just go to chapter 37. No, where's the Rashi? They always hide it somewhere in a weird place. No, it's just the Tanakh straight out. So let's go back to texts. Talmud, Musar, Second Temple. Hasidut, Musar, Jewish thought, Kabbalah, Halakha, Midrash, Mishnah. And darn it. Where did they stick that? Prophets, writings. Okay. I think it's down here. Rishonim, Rashi. Genesis 37. And we are in which verse? We're in Pasim, Ketona Pasim 37:3. Benzikrunim Pasim. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Pasim Lashon Kli Melat. I don't even know what that means. Sometimes Rashi speaking already a different language, so it's sometimes hard to understand what he's saying. I'll just take the arrangement of fine wool. Kemo Karpas Tchelet. 1 second here. Oh, reading the wrong thing. Okay, Lashon Klei Melet. Pasim is the term for raiment of fine wool. Okay, similar karpas, fine linen and blue. Karpas tchelet, and that's coming from Esther 1:6, which you won't go to. Same garment, ketonet pasim is mentioned, right? Kumo ketonet pasim. Tamar ve'amnon. That's what we just looked at. I don't know what this Rashi Tevot stands for. Al Shem Tsarutav. That we made, therefore gather that was made of very fine material. Okay. Okay. Shame, I'm not sure what these mean, but anyway, Tsarotav, Shinimkar. Okay, so there's some hint that Shinimkar Potifar. Okay, so why are they saying it? There's a midrashic statement that in the word pasim we may find an allusion to all his misfortune. I don't get it. I get it. Oh, geez. Oh man, look at that. That's sickening almost. So you see what they're doing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a midrashic statement that the word pasim, we may find that in the word pasim we may find an allusion to all his misfortunes. He was sold to Potiphar, to the merchants, the Socharim, Ishmaelim, and the Midyanim. Look at these 4 words: Potiphar, Socharim, Ishmaelim,
so
and
it's like
Midyanim.
an acronym.
The first letter of each one. Potiphar starts with a Pei. Socharim with a Samech. Ishmaelim with a Yud. Yeah, the same. Okay. At any rate, that's typical rabbinical, gobbledygook. But it doesn't a multicolored or striped, right? Which is very
It's not
interesting.
founded anywhere.
Now I'm going to check one more source. It's not found anywhere. I'm going to check one more source here, and let's see. So, I'm going to go to. Oh, I can check it on. I'm going to check it on my phone. I like to look at the faster / bit up on the computer, but I didn't. So let me check Robert Alter, who's kind of a modern day but very good biblical scholar, and let's see what he has to say. So I'll go to my Nook. And we're Genesis 37. Let's see how he translates it and if he says anything about it. Okay, chapter 34. Scroll through just a bit. Chapter 35.
So pardon me, Melech. I just went and I checked what Ibn Ezra has to say, and he gives a more subtle breakdown of the words. And so,
yeah,
Ibn Ezra says, "Pasim kitonot." He says a coat of many colors. Kitonot pasim means an embroidered coat, and he says that the word pasim is similar to the Aramaic word pas, which means part, and then part of the hand. So Ibn Ezra says the word pasim means of many colors.
Okay, and he says it based on the fact that the word pas in Aramaic means like a finger of a hand.
Yeah. So he says,
okay,
many colors. The word pasim means many colors because it's similar to the Aramaic word pas, part of, and a hand.
Okay, interesting. He may or may not be right or wrong, but what we did do here is realize that, okay, at least by the time of Ibn Ezra, there was the idea that it was a multicolored garment, right?
Yeah.
So Ibn Ezra is what, around the 1200s or so?
Yeah, the medieval period, a little after the Rambam.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. Gudela. 1089, 1090. Yeah. So he's basically 12th century, 1100s. Okay. So let's see here. Let me see what Robert Alter has to say. He's my boy who I was checking in with. 37, and we're in verse. Which verse was it? 37:3. 37:3. And Joseph brought ill report of them to their father, and Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, for he was a child of his old age, and he made him an ornamented tunic, is how he translates it. An ornamented tunic. Nothing about stripes or colors. And I'll read the comment here that he writes. An ornamented tunic. The only clue about the name. This is Robert Alter now in his book. The 5 Books of Moses. The only clue about the nature of the garment is offered by the one other mention of it in the Bible, which we saw in the story of the rape of Tamar, 2 Samuel 13, in which, incidentally, there is a whole network of pointed allusions to the Joseph story, right? That's for sure. There we are told that the ketonet pasim was worn by virgin princesses. It is thus a unisex garment and a product of ancient haute couture, which I think means high culture in French, but I'm not high culture enough to know what haute couture means, but I believe it means high culture. E.A. Spicer cites a cuneiform text with an apparently cognate phrase that seems to indicate a tunic with appliqué, another French word which I have no idea what it means, ornamentation. I think appliqué must mean applied, like painted on or something like that. Other scholars have pointed to a 14th century BCE Egyptian fresco showing captive Canaanite noblemen adorned with tunics made of longitudinal panels sewn together. Maybe that's where they get it from. At any rate, that's all that that Robert Alter has to say about the issue. So I think we should just leave it. We've explored it more than we need to. Right?
That was actually more in
And,
depth than what the Gedolim had to say.
yeah, really. But it goes to show, excuse me, just 1 second here. It does go to show something very important, which is that, you know, as Karaites or biblical scholars or whatever each person wants to call himself, you know, I don't try to enforce the label Karaite on anybody. But just give me 1 second. I'm just going to turn on a bit more light. It's dark in here. You know, however we want to define ourselves, that one of the things we have to do is 1 second. Whoa. Let's try that. Oh, dear. You know, one of the things we have to do is really, you know, look at the Torah with a very open, I would say, almost like a fresh look and a critical mind, because there's so many things that we've learned in the past, you know, that we take for granted because it's made its way into you know, our minds in one way or another, and it might actually have nothing to do with the original text of the Torah. I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what kind of garment he had on him. It's not, you know, not the point of the story, but still, it's an interesting insight about how, I won't say the word critical because it's almost a negative word, but how you know, fresh we have to look at every word that we come across in the Tanakh to get, you know, to undo all the programming from the various cultures that have, you know, made their little mark on the Tanakh. So there we go. We really don't know what it is. Maybe striped, maybe not, maybe just an ornate garment, right?
Yeah.
And, so there we have it. Ton Tapasim. Okay. Yiru Echav ki oto ahav avihim mikol echav yisneu. 5 minutes because I have to connect my battery pack. I have to connect the electricity to the computer else because the battery's almost dead. Wayiru Echav. So at any rate, so he's wearing this ornate garment. We'll translate it as now the same one that Tamar was wearing. Interesting, right? That Tamar. Okay, so oh well, this is Yosef already. No, so Yehuda is the one. But Tamar is mentioned around here as well. No, I won't even go in that direction. Okay. So here he comes with his you know, ornate garment. It's clear, you know, who Daddy loves the most. And his brothers saw. This is verse 4. His brothers saw that that their father loved him the most among all his brothers, and therefore yisnu oto, and therefore they hated him. They hated him. They couldn't even speak peacefully to him. Right. So his father loved him, and that the love,
Yeah.
it's interesting that the juxtaposition here, his father loved him the most, and his brothers hated him. The love of the father caused the hate from the brothers, you know? So, all right, verse 5. ויחלום יוסף חלום, והגיע לאחיו יוסיף עוד שנוא אותו. So Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated it, and after that they hated him even more. Yosifu od snoto. Well, now we'll find out. Now, of course, we know what the dream is, but the reason is what the contents of the dream, right? And he said to them, "Hey, listen to this dream I had. You're not going to believe this." Sher halamti. Hine anachnu almim alumim. So we were. So an aluma, they usually translate it as a sheaf, I think. Sheaf. So sheaf is so what is a sheaf? Let me close some of these here. A sheaf is like a bundled. It's like a bundle of. Let's get a definition for sheaf. A bundle of grain stalks laid lengthwise and tied together after reaping. So sheaf. That's a sheaf. So it's basically a way to store grain after it's been. What's that bring it? What does this do? Google Lens? No, I don't want Google Lens. Anyway, that's the idea. You can see it on the screen. So what the heck? Okay, so that's a sheaf right there, right? Yeah. Okay, so they're. So it says almim alumim. So they're sheafing sheaves, literally. I guess they're tying up sheaves, right? B'toch hasadeh, in the field. V'hine kama alumati, and my sheaf rises up. So here's something else. They always picture it as a single stalk of grain, right? When you see like images of the dream, it's always a single stalk of grain, and then all the other stalks of grain bow down before the single stalk of grain.
Yeah. So
right?
it's almost like, and that's symbolic of Joseph's work in comparison to theirs. I mean, I think you could safely say that.
Say again?
So it's almost like it's symbolic of Joseph's harvest versus that of his brothers. I know it does make the correlation where his father interprets it for him and says that those are your brothers and you're the one that's upright while they're bowing towards you. At the same time, you could also take this as, right. They went and they lived in famine while he was basically harvesting, greatly in Egypt.
Interesting. I never thought of it with that angle. Okay, that's an interesting take on it. But okay, at any rate, the point I wanted to make is it's not a single grain; it's a sheaf. So you have these sheaves, right? There's a sheaf, right? It's always depicted as a single grain, but it's not. It's a sheaf. It's a whole bunch of stalks of grain tied together with another stalk of grain. So kama alumati. So my sheaf arose. V'gam nitzava, stood upright. I guess you can translate that as arose and stood upright. V'hine tisubena. So lasov means to lean backwards. I guess lean down is the way they would translate it. Stood all around. Tisubena lasov. I'm sorry, my mistake. So tisubena alumotechem. So all of your sheaves gathered around with tishtachavena le alumati, and bow down before my sheaf. So all of the brothers gathered, the brothers' sheaves gathered around in a circle and bowed down before him. Verse 8, Yomru lo echav, and his brothers said to him, Maloch timloch aleinu, im mashol timshol banu, v'yosif od snoto al halamotav al devarav. So his brothers said to him, do you possibly think you're going to be king over us? For that you're going to reign, or that you possibly think you're going to reign over us? And they hated him, and after that they hated him even more. And here we have repetition. We have a doubling, hamaloch timloch. So doubling in the Torah almost always means emphasis, or dagesh, kind of an emphasis on that. They usually translate it as, do you certainly think, or do you verily think, right? That you will
doubling down on
us. Okay. And here, yeah, exactly. It's I always give the English analogy of, it's very, very hot outside. We do that in English as well. We double, words sometimes. Although not in Hebrew, it's very common to see it in biblical Hebrew. My battery's about to die, so I'm going to put on music for just a couple of minutes while I hook it up to the electricity, and I'll be right back.
Take your time.
כמנחה על מחבת השומר שבת הבן עם הבת כמנחל מחווה רוכב ערבות מלך עולמים דמו לשבות יזן בנעימים במחל ירבות במיני מטעמים במלבושי כבוד זבח משפחה השומר שבת הבנים הבת לאל ירצו כמנחה למחבת השומר שבת הבנים הבת לאל ירצו כמנחה למחבת ואשרי כל חוכם לתשלומי חפל מאת כל צוחק שוכן בערפל נחלה לא יזכה בהר ובשפל נחלה ומנוחה כשמש לא זרחה השומר שבת הבנים הבת לאל ירצו כמנחה על המחבת השומר שבת הבנים הבת לאל ירצו כמנחה למחבת כל שומר שבת כדת מחללו הכשר חיבת קודש גורלו ואם יצא חובת היום אשרינו אדון מחוללו מנחי שלוחה השומר שבת הבנים הבת לאל ירצו כמנחה על המחת השומר שבת
Hello. Okay. Let me stop this video. Okay. Jewish music. But you probably don't even remember what music is, Nelson. I think it was before your time. Kind of like elevator music, you know?
Yeah, now everything is just robotic and synthetic.
Yeah. No, it's like background music that they would play, and they would call it elevator music. Background music that you hear in elevators. So I call this.
Oh yeah, you said background music. Yeah.
Like Jewish elevator music, Okay, so let's see here. I've got to stop screen, share screen. And then I'm going to do this, and this, and then we're good to go. Okay, so, yeah. Okay, so now they hate him even more. we're in verse 9. V'yachlom od halom acher. So now he has another dream. V'yisaper oto lechav, and lechav yomer hine halamti halom od. Now another dream. Hine hashemesh ve'yarech v'chad asar kochavim mishtachavim li. So this time he has another dream, and the sun and the moon and 7 stars are bowing down to me. Visaper el aviv. So first he tells it to his brothers. Visaper el aviv el achiv. Vigarbo aviv, and his father was. How would you translate that as? God got angry at, or okay, they translate as rebuke. Bo aviv yomer lo ma chalom hazeh. So his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream? Asher chalamta havon navo aniva imcha vechecha lishtachavot lecha adsa." Is it really going to be that do you really think that me and your mother and your brothers are going to bow down before you to the ground, are going to prostrate themselves on the ground before you? Now, what's interesting here is, remember, his mother is already dead, right?
Oh yeah, that's right, because she died after giving birth to Benjamin.
She died in Efrat, right? He's now down in, then we saw that Yaakov and his family moved on to Hebron, so they're in the Hebron area apparently, right? And so he has a dream about his dead mother bowing down to him. Isn't that weird? It's something we kind of miss, because we kind of think of this as prophecy, right? That this actually happens when the brothers bow down before him, when they think he's the king of Egypt, right? And it is. Right. It's clearly a reference to that, but the dream includes his father, who I don't think ever bowed down before him, and his dead mother, who certainly is not going to bow down to him in the future because she's already gone, right? So it's very weird. I guess it shows that dreams are not true predictors of prophecy, but they're visions, they're images,
Yeah, you can't really take it for face value. Like, I don't think we'd be able to interpret it without the way Jacob was gifted, and obviously as Daniel was too, with the gift of interpreting the dreams in a godly manner. Because sometimes you can take it like, oh, in my dream I was rolling around in money. That means I'm going to be a millionaire. Obviously not. Maybe that's just what you think about a lot.
Right. Well, this definitely seems to be an element of prophecy about this, right? Because this actually happens in the end. The brothers do bow down before Yosef, but it's not a direct vision of exactly what's going to happen. It can't be, because Rachel's already dead, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the point I want to make is that I think this is a dream. It's not prophecy, but a prophecy is kind of like a dream, because at the end of Deuteronomy it says regarding Moses, when I speak to a prophet, I speak to him in dreams and visions, but only to you do I speak face to face, right? Like a friend speaks to his friend, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So we know that prophecy comes in dreams and visions, and therefore it's okay. The point I want to make, and I think it's a very important point, is that when we read prophecies in the Tanakh, we can't always take them 100% literally.
Yeah, there's a level of allegory there.
Yeah, or a level of fogginess, or a level of just, you have to understand the underlying theme rather than the actual take the content of the prophecy 100% literally. And I think this is a mistake, unfortunately, that maybe more than anyone Qaraites make, because we're so focused on the Tanakh that we will think, which is of course a great thing, but I've seen many Qaraites take prophecy and use the kind of as proof texts that such and such is going to happen at the end of days. And I think that's a mistake, because yes, you can take these prophecies and get a general idea of what's going to happen, but I don't think you can say, aha, see, the Torah says that, I don't know, the horses are going to be blue, So therefore, the horses will be blue. That may have just been part of a vision,
Yeah. So you have to really learn how to thread the needle and look at the overall context. Because again, kind of back to what we said about Moses and seeing God face to face, panim v'panim. If you read that at face value, you're going to think, oh, God, you can end up with a Christian interpretation. God came and he saw him face to face.
Right.
But, that's obviously we don't believe that.
Sure, that's for sure. But and that's a good point. But what I'm saying is something a little bit different. I think, let me go to the book of Zechariah for a second to illustrate what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm. There you go, Zechariah. I think now I'm gonna have to find it. This is maybe the hard part. I think it's in chapter 7, maybe or so. Let's just see. Anyway, if I can't find it in a second, I'll just tell you what I'm thinking. But not listen. No, not there. Oh, I can't find it right now. Just give me one more second. I can't find. Wait, is this it? That was trying to no. I'm up here over them. Judah. Wait, give me one more second. It's a little bit after this. Yeah, here it must be here. Here. I'll just read it in the okay. I'll just read it in the English. The Lord, Yahweh, stretches out the heavens, who lays the foundation of the earth, and who forms the human spirit within a person, declares, I am going to make a Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. On that day, I will strike every horse with panic and its rider with madness, declares the Lord. I will keep a watchful eye over Judah, but I will blind all the horses of the nations. Okay, so I think that's what I'm looking for, but if not, it's similar. Wait a second. On that day, I'll set destroy. Anyway, the point is that it mentions in this so-called end-of-day prophecy, and there is discussion as to whether it really is end-of-day prophecy, but let's assume it is. Then it speaks about the horses of the nations. Okay, well, this is talking about like ancient. This is a prophecy, but it's of the end of days. The armies of the future are not going to be using horses, right? They're going to be coming tanks and planes and God knows what. But the prophecy speaks about the horses, and I think it also speaks about arrows and slingshots and all of this kind of stuff. That's what I was really looking for. But when the prophets have these visions of what probably is the end of days, or which may be the end of days, then they have the visions always include arrows and slingshots and horses and stuff like that, right? Which obviously can't be. It just shows right there that these visions are not meant to be taken 100% literally. They're kind of just, the theme is correct, but not necessarily all the details, right?
Yeah, and in context, that's to the prophet's understanding of what he saw. Of course, Isaiah is not going to have or Zechariah is not going to have the word airplane or nuke in it.
Right. Right. So that's another theory I've heard. Well, horses really, it means tanks. But when Zechariah saw this image of tanks, he didn't know what a tank was. It looked kind of like a horse, so he said it's a horse. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when he had this vision, he actually did see horses and arrows and slingshots and stuff like that, because he's not seeing a direct vision of what this prophecy is calling for. He's just seeing it, through a dream, right? Dreams use symbols and ideas and themes and concepts and feelings and all that kind of stuff. And so relating back to what we're seeing here, it's the same thing here, right? So this is not a direct prophecy of what's going to happen in the future, because his mother is not going to be bowing down to him because she's already gone and she's already dead. And so what he's seeing here is a general kind of, a vision dream of of something that touches on the truth in the future, but is not 100% accurate depiction of what's going to happen, right? I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, like you said, it's not literal.
Right. Exactly. And again, I think this is sometimes a problem I have when I'm discussing things with other Karaites, is they will take all prophecies to be quite literal. Like for instance, maybe a classic example would be the description of the third temple in the book of Ezekiel. Where it goes into great detail, but still that may just be the vision that he saw, not necessarily what the third temple is going to look like, right? So I think we have to be a little bit careful with prophecies, what I'm trying to say, and not and extract the theme behind it and the idea behind it without necessarily extracting all of the details and thinking that they're going to occur exactly as
it's written.
Yeah. Any rate, okay, so let's go on here. So I'm going for another 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm going to stop. I'm doing a morning study and an afternoon study. So we'll take a break here. I'm going to have some breakfast and some lunch, and then later on we'll do an afternoon study. And of course, if you want to join, I'd love to have you, Nelson. Always a pleasure. That goes without saying. Okay, so where are we? Okay, so mishtachamim. Okay, so Jacob gets upset about this. Okay, so Jacob's response is he rebukes him. He's a bit like hey son, just calm down here. I'm still the boss. All right, what is verse 11. And his brothers were jealous of him. Okay, so they hated him. Now it mentions twice that they hated him, and they're jealous of him. Obviously, these are all natural feelings that obviously he's the favored son, and he's having all these dreams, and so it's a natural reaction. Aviv shamar et hadavar, and this is usually translated as just like held his tongue. I'm curious to see what Robert Alter says about that one, because that's a phrase I've never really 100% understood. So this is verse 11. I think it just means held his tongue, like he didn't pass judgment yet, or he just kept quiet about the whole thing. And his father kept the thing in mind. Okay, fine, whatever that means. That's how Robert Alter translates it. Okay, so now the brothers. Okay, so that's the end of that scene. Scene closes. Now we have a new scene. The brothers, and this is all the brothers. Remember, before it was just the brothers of the concubines, right? Okay, now we have all the brothers. They went to tend to the flocks in Shechem. So isn't that interesting? So they're down in Hebron, but now they go back to Shechem, right?
Yeah, and they have flocks there, so that implies that they own land in the area of Shechem. So
very possibly, or I guess, I guess you could think of it this way. I mean, they basically destroyed Shechem, right?
So that's theirs now, essentially.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, also because it does mention that they took the children and the women, like I don't want to say captive, but they basically took possession of them. So of course it would make sense that they took the land as well.
Yeah, I think so. And then on the other hand, we have the statement that Yaakov basically he got the heck out of there. He was afraid that the inhabitants were going to kill him, and so he got out of there and went to Beth El. But then on the other hand, it does say, if we go back 1 second, 1 second. Scene. So we go back to the whole story with. Let's see here. Just find it. Okay. Yomer Elohim. I'm just looking for one phrase. New Yaakov here it is. It's Genesis chapter 35, verse 5. So this is when God tells Jacob to leave Shechem and go to Beth El. And as he's here, it says in chapter 35, verse 5, and as he traveled, or as they journeyed, the fear of God was upon all of the cities around, all of the surrounding cities. And they did not chase after, they did not come after the children of Yaakov. Okay, so it's true that it did say that Yaakov was worried that
They would attack him.
The inhabitants were going to take revenge on him, right? The inhabitants around Shechem were going to take revenge on him. The Canaanites and the Hivites were going to take revenge on him. But here it says that now God tells him to get the heck out of Shechem, go to Bethel, and then the fear of God was on all the surrounding towns, so they didn't. So I guess that's why here maybe they were able to go back to Shechem to even though Yaakov was worried about revenge, God put his fear upon all of the towns, and so I guess they were able to hold on to their possession in Shechem, right?
Yeah.
So, and of course, Shechem is very closely associated with Yosef, right? In the blessing that is given to Yosef at the end of the book of Genesis, it says Shechem echad me'al achiv, which means they should translate it as one part above all the brothers, but it would imply that Shechem was given to Joseph. We also know that he was buried in Shechem, and to this day, there are many Jews who sneak over into the quote unquote Palestinian territories. And
I mean, the Samaritans they kind of hold the same tradition. If I'm correct, but I could be wrong.
They hold the tradition
that Joseph is buried there as well, and at least from what we can deduce from the New Testament as well, the Samaritans made their claim to the land via Joseph.
Mm-hmm. Explain.
So in the Christian Gospels, when Jesus is having a conversation with a woman who's called the Samaritan at the well, basically she says that well was made by Jacob and Joseph, and that they at least from a Christian standpoint, the Samaritans descend from Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting to disregarding the Christian thing now. In the blessing of the 12 tribes, I don't know if it's Shechem that's given by Jacob to Joseph, but he basically says that I acquired this lot with my bow, or this extra land, and he gives that to Joseph and Joseph's children. Now, I don't know if it's Shechem, but we'll probably get to that in a few weeks or so.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was referring to, where and it uses the word Shechem achad me'al achiv, or I think those are the words. It uses the word Shechem right there. We could take a look at that maybe for a second. That's going to be in Genesis 48, I believe. No, let's look at that for 1 second. Tani, okay. Shimon Belevi. And here we go. Yehuda. Schar. Done. Shimon, Naftali. Tishbet. And here we go. There's Yosef ben Porat. Yosef ben Porat alei ayin benot arra ilay shubur. Let's see, man. Bichat ben Yamin. I can't find it right now. Let's see. Is it after this? No, this is where Jacob dies. I can't find it right now. Okay, yeah. I'd have to. No, let's do it this way. Let's Google it.
Should be on.
Genesis 48:22. I think. One point. Yeah, there it is. Genesis 48:22. Okay, so 48:22. Okay, there's 48:22. Here it is. Okay. Yomer Yisrael El Yosef. Hine Anochi Meit. So this is after V'yivarchem b'yomahu. Okay, so this is after he blesses all of them. Yivarchem b'yomahu lemor b'cha yivarech Yisrael. Okay. Yes. This is with Ephraim and Ma. Okay, this is before. This is with Ephraim and Menashe. And Yosef has brought his sons Ephraim and Menashe there. And then he says here in verse 21, V'yomer Yisrael El Yosef. Israel says to Yosef, Hine anochi meit, I'm going to die. V'haya Elohim imachem, and God will be with you. Ve'shiv etchem el eretz avotechem, and return you to the land of your fathers. V'ani natati lecha Shechem echad al achecha, and I have given you one Shechem above your brothers. Asher lakachti miyad ha'emori v'charbi u'bekashti, which I have taken from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my my bow. So it's kind of a strange statement, right? Because Yaakov didn't take it with his sword and his bow, right? Unless
and like we don't have anything on that's recorded in the Torah. Yet somehow he gained possession of it.
Yeah, but then again, the word Shechem also has a meaning in Hebrew, which is usually a shoulder, right? So Shechem so Shechem here is like Kadal Shichma. So here we have the jar on a shoulder. That's speaking about Rachel, I believe, or Rivka. I think Rachel. So Shechem just means a shoulder, right? Or if we go to the BDB for a second, shoulder derived from Shechmo, shoulder. Statement of Shaul's height here. Yeah, so it just means shoulder here. And so here, so it could just mean like a portion, like
a greater portion than that of his brothers.
So it's not clear referring to Shechem. If it is referring to Shechem, if it's referring to the place Shechem, then maybe it's it's a play on words, right? Maybe it is Shechem, but it's not clear that it's referring to Shechem. Let me just see one thing here. And here it's translated as portion. Let's do something else. 40 that. So we'd have to go back. Let's go back to 37. Okay. Okay, so let's click on this. So Shechem, ridge, they translate it as the district, proper name of Palestine, probably shoulder, saddle of a mountain. So here they translate it as a ridge, again, shoulder, saddle of a mountain. And let's see here where Shechem shows up. Okay, Adalon. Shechem. So Abraham was in Shechem. Shechem. So this is now all talking about, this is the whole thing with Dinah here. This is all Dinah. That's all Dina. 34, Genesis 34. 35, that's what we just saw now. Okay, so now in Shechem, Shechema. Then we already go to Joshua. That's interesting. Let me just see one thing here. No, that's not what I wanted. 63 occurrences. I think this is what I need to click on. I have to sort it somehow. Okay, good enough. I guess that's in order. 435. Yeah, so in the book of Genesis, after this story, then Shechem is never mentioned again. Right? So it does not mention in the Tanakh that Joseph was buried in Shechem or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the whole idea that Joseph was buried in Shechem comes from this blessing in Genesis 48 of here, of I've given you one portion above your, where is it? Genesis 48, 22. Right? So this is where the whole idea that Yosef was buried in Shechem comes from. I've given you one portion or one shoulder above your brothers, which I took from the Amorites with my sword and my bow. So I think what happens here is that, I guess from this blessing, the legend came about that Joseph was buried in Shechem, but it doesn't mention that he was buried in Shechem, right? At all.
Yeah. There is the account in Exodus on Joseph's burial, when Moshe comes back with everyone and they take him.
Yeah.
But I don't remember where they buried him.
Yeah, that's as a matter of fact, that's exactly what I wanted to check right now. So let's check that out. That's right at the end of Exodus. Let's take a look at that. Huh? No, it's not the end of Exodus. I'm sorry. It's at the end of the Exodus story, which is going to be at around 14. Okay. When they leave Egypt. No, it's got to be before here. 13. Oh, wait a second. There are two references actually. At the end of Genesis, Yosef tells his brothers to make sure, or tells the descendants to make sure that. Okay, wait a second. Let's find that first. When he buried Jacob, the death of Joseph. Here it is. Okay. So there it is. Okay. Yosef Lephraim, Bnei Shelechim, Bnei Machir, Menashe Al Bircha. So he sees his descendants born. Yomer Yosef El Aviv, Genesis 50, verse 24. And Yosef said to his brothers, Anochim Meit, I'm about to die. Elohim Pakad Yifkod Etchem, and Elohim and God will certainly forget you. He'll take you out of this land and bring you up to the land that was sworn to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. V'yishaba Yosef et bnei Yisrael lemor pakod yifkod Elohimchem v'ha'alitem et asmotai mizeh. When God remembers you, take my bones up out of this place. V'yamat Yosef ben mea v'eser shanim. So that's all it really mentions here. And then it mentions in the Exodus, and I think the only other thing it mentions is that that when the Israelites left, that Moses took Joseph's bones. And that's in Exodus. So it doesn't mention anywhere about a place, right? Let's take a look at that. So that's again got to be here, Exodus 13. Death of the first, no, it's over there. Israelites, part of the Red Sea.
Okay, so I just found something, Melech. Pardon the intrusion.
Yeah.
Joshua 24 relates the burial of Joseph in Shechem.
Okay. Now we're talking. So where is that?
It's in Joshua 24. Let's see the verse 32. So,
Okay. ותעצמות יוסף אשר העלו בני ישראל ממצרים קברו בשכם. Okay, there we go. בחלקת השדה אשר קנה יעקב מאת בני חמור, אבי שכם במאה כסיתה, ויהיו לבני יוסף לנחלה, ואלעזר בן אהרון מת. Okay, so here we have a lot of information. Okay. I'm surprised I forgot this piece of information because I was listening not recently to the entire book of Joshua in audio. Okay, so Atzmot Yosef. Okay, so the bones of Yosef, which the children is brought up out of Egypt, Kavru b'Shechem, they buried it in Shechem. B'chelkat Sadeh asher kana Yaakov me'et b'nei Chamor, in the portion of the field, or the basically the field portion that Yaakov bought from the children. Acquired, I guess they mean here bought. Interesting. Bought. He didn't buy it from them. He killed them and took it. Okay, well we won't mess any deeper. At any rate, let's just let that sit. Avi Shechem, the father of Shechem, b'mea ksita, that he bought it with 100 ksita, which is a currency. And it became became an inheritance to the children of Israel. Okay, so there we go. So we have it explicitly. Okay, so then if this became an inheritance to the children of Yosef, then maybe this does back here. Maybe this in Genesis 48. Maybe it is a play on words, which says Shechem Echad above all the rest, right? Maybe Shechem Echad, even though it means shoulder, is referring to Shechem. But here it says, Asher lakachti miyadi emori b'charbi b'kashti, which I took from the Amorites with the sword and with the bow. But here it says, which I bought from the Amorites for 100 kasita. And then in the story, with Dinah in Genesis 35, then we have that he didn't take it with his sword and his bow. His sons slaughtered them. His sons burnt it to the ground and stole it. I mean, not stole it, took it. So I don't know what's going on. We'd have to investigate further. If somebody knows, please let me know. But this is the kind of investigations I love to do. You know, you get nested deep into the Torah and you start investigating and you find out all kinds of interesting things because again, there's just so many preconceptions we all have and who knows where various work their way into our perception of the Torah. And even it's funny because I know modern Hebrew. I lived in Israel for many years and I'm fluent in modern Hebrew. And some would say, well, that's great. That helps you understand and understand the Torah even better. But to be honest, it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, yes, it helps you understand a lot of the words in the Torah better. On the other hand, a lot of the words in modern Hebrew that appear, that are taken from biblical Hebrew have a completely different meaning because their meaning has changed exactly in this way, through Midrashim, through the influence of other languages, through the 3,000 years of Jewish history, these meanings have seeped their way into what became modern Hebrew. So a lot of times, like the idea of the Keton Tapasim, in modern Hebrew, the word pas means a stripe or a strip. And, so if you don't investigate clearly the biblical Hebrew, you might say, I know modern Hebrew, of course, pas means a stripe or a strip. So therefore, Keton Tapasim means, the striped dress, but it's much deeper than that. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is that modern Hebrew can sometimes block you from understanding the original meaning and the intent of the Torah, rather than help you. Okay, so some guy, a beginning? Who the heck is that? Writing something in Arabic? Okay, I'd grab it and run it through Google Translate. At any rate, forget Abigini. So, what is he saying? Adisulal il daki il Quran, something about the Quran. Okay, any rate, so that's that. All right, Nelson, any final words before we end the morning study?
Yeah, just to conclude on what you're saying, it's so interesting how we can take our own preconceived notions into the Torah as we read it. And when we tried going and looking for the origin of the word pasim and stuff, you can't really find anything that's the same as what you see in modern culture. And I think that plays a huge role in general in how we view the Torah and when we read it. We tend to have our own lens that we see it through, and like you said, we've just got to have an open mind and realize that we might be wrong. And if we care so much about this and we consider it to be the word of God, we ought to investigate it thoroughly.
Yep, absolutely. Nicely summed up. And of course, at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't matter so much as long as we're dealing in that they want us to do. But of course, it's as well as possible. So yeah, that was a nice way of summing up. And I guess we'll sum it up with the famous Karaite statement. Shapir Shapir search well in the scriptures and do not rely on my opinion. And I think that really applies to what kind of analysis we should be doing in the Torah, is to get rid of all our preconceptions and really go back to the text. So, all right. So with that being
Thank you,
said,
Melech.
let's end it here. Nelson, you hope to see you later this afternoon if you have time. That would be great. And we'll start it up again in about 2.5 hours. We're going to have the afternoon study.
Mm-hmm. Take care, Melech. See you soon.
All right. See you soon. Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye. Awesome.
העולמים רוחו במנחה השומר שבת הבנים הבא ליצור כמנחה על מחבת השומר שבת הבנים הבת לאל ירצו כמנחה על מחבת זכור את יום השבת לקדשו כאנו כי גבהה